Hi, everybody. This is Angela Catalessa here with Dimitrios Samsonidis. Did I get it right?
Perfect pronunciation.
Um, he is a friend of mine, a fellow polymathy scholar, a career counselor at the University of Crete, which is one of the top 400 universities in the world and the top university in Greece. And we are here today for another installment of Dimitrios and Angela Talk About Polymathy. So,
Yeah.
and we had a talk a few months ago that was about education a lot. It was such a good chat.
And also the origins of the Greek words polymath.
Exactly, with a native Greek speaker. It was awesome. So if you haven't seen that video, please check it out. So today we are going to talk a bit about polymathy and creativity and pattern recognition. So Demetrios, tell me what comes up for you with this subject. Like, tell me some of your thoughts on this.
So polymaths, because they tend to dwell in so many different scientific fields and also hobbies that become part of their identity and part of themselves, tend to recognize patterns to, in the beginning, not connected things and tend to connect them, overlap them, and they find meaning in this connection and they create new ideas. It's so a lot of studies have been done. You have mentioned a lot in your PhD dissertation, in your latest articles as well, about how creativity connects to polymathy. And one step before that, in my opinion, and of course you can correct me, is that pattern recognition is a step towards the process of creativity and polymathy.
I think so. I like this angle of thinking about it through pattern recognition because typically I've sort of talked about it in terms of analogical thinking, and I think maybe pattern recognition and analogical thinking are maybe have a little bit of that Venn diagram overlap. Because in analogical thinking, you apply and it's sort of like taking something from one domain and applying it elsewhere. It's sort of like, oh, I could try this pattern, recognize this pattern, and stick it over here. So analogical thinking is similar, I think, to pattern recognition, but I'm excited to explore more of this idea of pattern recognition because it's not something I've really looked at when I consider polymathy and creativity. But I think you're right, because really, when it comes down to it, creativity means you're being original. You're doing something in a unique way. You're combining something.
I'm gonna correct you over here,
Oh,
because many scholars have said that originality is dead, that we are not 100% original, but because we connect to previous idea from somebody else, we come up with something
yeah.
slightly different.
Originality may be dead in single silos, but originality is not dead when you combine ideas in polymathic ways. It's the wild, wild west as far as that's concerned, in my opinion. And by the way, you're European, so you might not know what that mean by the wild, wild west. It's just an open frontier, like the United States was
Yeah, yeah.
200
You
years
know,
ago. With so
having
much.
done American studies during my bachelor's degree of English literature and having dwelled deep into American history, I can totally understand where this statement is coming from. And also this movement towards the West, this exploration, also was a sense of polymath because people had to survive in a different environment, communicate with the natives, the American native people, and discover a new culture that was already existing there. So many skills were used in order to explore the West.
You know what I want to ask you? So this sort of begs the question. I mean, obviously, I looked at creativity. I studied creativity as it relates to polymathy. And it sounds like you have too. You've thought a lot about creativity. But aside from what the literature says, never mind what the scholars in the field say, just for Demetrios, what do you think creativity is? Like, how would you define it? How would you describe it? What is creativity?
Ooh, that's a very tough question.
It is.
Uh, for I'm gonna try the personal, not the scientific approach, the very personal approach, and I'm gonna say creativity is an expression of emotions, of self, of identity through different mediums. We often said that artists are very creative people, and we have connected artistry, dancing, poetry, designing, drawing, sculpturing with creativity. And this is an expression of ideas and emotions through a medium, but also writing, uh, writing even academic texts is also creativity and this whole process.
Yeah. You know what you said? It really struck me. And I wonder if this idea is true. Like creativity emerges from the self. It is filtered through a human being. I mean, maybe now AI too, but
Yeah.
creativity it requires intelligence, sentience, consciousness. And so, and even actually, creativity shows up in nature, the way a flower attracts bees or, um, that sort of thing. Creativity shows up in all sorts of ways, but I think when you're considering human creativity, it does emerge from a self, from an identity, in concert, I think, with the environment, with ideas, with prior exposure, with new combinations. And part of the reason why polymathic thinking can be so powerful for people and entities, companies, businesses looking for creativity and innovation is because so much of what we consider creativity within domains has already been exhausted. It's already been determined. Maybe if you're a super hyper narrow specialist, you might be able to come up with something new if you dive really deep into a single domain. But when you're looking at silos, we've sort of figured out a lot, right? And so where you really see the payoff of getting new, creative, innovative solutions
Well,
is at the
even to
disciplines frequently.
yeah, even towards AI, as for example, with ChatGPT and the new AI with the avatars, or especially lately, I've used one where you provide a superhero and then provides a time or some other keywords, and the AI is gonna create you pictures of that superhero. For example, my favorite hero is Batman, and my favorite time is European medieval times with the knights in armor and all that. And it created some photos of Batman like a knight. So this was creativity. A human person put the keywords towards the machine, and the machine created the illustrations. So even if, my opinion, even if AI advanced to even a higher level, the way the model is working right now, it needs a human to present the parameters, the keywords,
Mhm.
the functionality.
It does sort of beg the question too, like, what does this mean for human creativity in a world where we now have AI that's becoming more accessible to the masses? I mean, just in the past month or two, I've seen a lot of people getting into the chat GPT and the
Mhm.
avatar thing, like just bam, all of a sudden we've been hearing about AI and then now it's in people's lives in a real practical,
Yep.
fun way.
Uh,
Um,
a great tool for me as a career counselor as well. Some trick. I also saw it from other career counselors. You put your resume on ChatGPT. This is control say from Word, control paste to the ChatGPT. This is, and you say, this is my resume. Now this is, and then you put the job description of a company. This is the job description. Now write me a cover letter, and it's gonna produce a cover letter. So it saves so much time and effort, and it's also, you can also personalize it as well.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Yeah, it sort of begs the question, like creativity and creativity studies is like has this whole new frontier to explore for how human creativity, when partnered with artificial intelligence, what can we do? What innovations can we create in the new world we're in now?
I think
That's a pun intended.
like remote work and video conferencing right now, that came with the boom of COVID and the pandemic. This AI's models, ChatGPT, again, it's gonna be an expansion. It's gonna be a fast forward agent towards technology, towards many fields, because you can do so much work much faster. It's gonna allow society, again, like remote work and video conferencing, to even progress even further and faster.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. So what about pattern recognition? Let's shift to that a little bit more.
Hmm.
What comes up for you, like when you think about pattern recognition as a precursor for creative polymathy?
I In the beginning, when you referred to analytical thought and analogical thinking,
Mhm.
uh, I said this pattern recognition? And I thought to myself, and then the example I gave to myself was the transferable skills that we have some flat skills that go across different fields, and this is happening with this independently studies. For example, coding, programming, digital skills, soft skills are traveling from one field into the other. And or even, for example, if you're a great chemist, you can also become a great biochemist or things like that. So pattern recognition, recognizing some motives in two different things, and that they are kind of parallel, but in the beginning they seem separate, but you can find a connection from here to here, and then you can come up with something new, or something from a different angle, not exactly new, but you can look things from a different perspective.
Absolutely. And can I share with you, I did this for my doctoral dissertation. So when I entered my doctoral program, the professors reminded us that when you're studying any issue, that there are different levels of analysis, they called it. They said you can study something at the macro level of analysis, which is like society-wide, planet-wide, like at the high level. Then you can also study it at the meso level, which is like a group level, organization, not huge group, but like a group level, or
The
at the
medium.
micro level of analysis, at the one person at a time. And I remember thinking, just having this aha moment of like, how come when we think about what diversity means, we only look at the macro and meso levels? What if we applied the idea of diversity at a micro level of analysis? Can diversity exist within one person? And I
Oh,
started playing with this idea of intrapersonal diversity. I thought I had coined the term actually, because I had never heard of it. And then I Googled it and it wasn't brand new. It had been looked at mostly in the field of science with the gut microbiome, for example. When you have more intrapersonal diversity in your gut, you're healthier. But this was an example of, oh, human beings have realized you can apply the concept of diversity with any human being. And this
also in psychology.
you could do this with many different phenomenon. Has the phenomenon been studied at the macro, meso, and micro level? And if not, try it. There's a
Yeah.
creativity and innovation right there.
Again, this is some pattern recognition that so they have find the same thing in the macro level, how this affects society, the environment, the global society or whatnot. So what if I try and test it in the medium level, meso, Greek word again. Uh, and so again, this is a pattern recognition that, oh, they use the scientific approach, for example, if it's to academia, or they used a selling marketing technique at the micromanagement level. Let me try it at a different level. Again, this is some pattern recognition that since this worked there, let me check if this is going to work at a different level.
Mm-hmm. There's something else I do too sometimes to get new insights, and I'm not sure if it's pattern recognition, but it definitely is applying sort of a mode in many different instances or examples, which is just to play devil's advocate. Like if I hear something, I go, well, is it true? Could the opposite be true? And it helps me analyze issues from a more holistic perspective when I don't just agree or buy it. I actually go, okay, there's this side. Let me look at the opposite. And which one do I think is more accurate, or is the truth somewhere in the middle? So that's another example of sort of a way of thinking and approach. I don't know if it's pattern recognition, but it's a tool that can be used to come up with more polymathic insights and observations by just looking at both sides of an issue instead of just one, you know?
Again, for example, pattern recognition is taking an idea, as we said with creativity as well, taking an already existing idea, taking from one field. Okay, I tried this process, for example, in human resources. Okay, let me now try this again, same process in marketing.
Yeah.
It's going to bring the same value. It's going to bring a negative value. It's going to have a greater even impact.
Or maybe
So
you
take,
apply it with a twist, like maybe you kind of apply it, but then you make it a little custom to that field too. But you have a basis of taking that approach, that way of thinking, that pattern recognition, applying it somewhere new, maybe it doesn't fit exactly, but if you tweak it, it would fit, you know? So I think
Yeah,
that that may be a good tool too. But sorry, you were talking and I interrupted.
no worries, no worries. This is the fun about having conversation.
Yeah.
And of course, interrupting means you come up with something important that you want to discuss, and it's fitting at that moment that it is said. So, and also, I have said this many times, I learn through conversations. Right
Mm,
now, for me, it's like having a university lecture.
mm,
And this is a teachable moment for me. Because even when I express my idea to another person, I'm like, okay, now it's time for spears. Try and disprove my idea so I can make it better, stronger. And this is another process again, since you're gonna find maybe some other patterns from my idea with something else. So we're gonna come up with a whole new different idea,
mhm.
while combining things and combining fields.
Yeah, those new combinations can absolutely lead to some real great creativity. Um, here's another example. I'm just going with what comes to mind as we
Yeah.
speak, but I I care very much about having self-awareness in my own life, being knowing myself, being intelligent, emotionally aware, like being able to regulate my own emotional world and social relationships and interpersonal connections, right? I care about people. And there have been some times in the past where I was quick to judge someone and make an opinion of them.
Mm.
And then I later realized, ooh, I was wrong. I was wrong. This person's wonderful. I don't know why I judged them so quickly. I must have been cranky that day or something. And that's an example for me. I recognize this pattern about myself that I can be quick to form an opinion, a mental heuristic, a shortcut. Ooh, let me just label that person, come up with a judgment. And then later on, I realized that judgment was very short sighted. I didn't really know the person. And I jumped to this conclusion that's not even accurate. And so this is an example. I know I've seen this pattern enough in myself that I've been able to change it. It's recognizing a pattern. And in my
In
case,
yourself.
it's just in myself. It's not interdisciplinary. It's not really even polymathic, except that it is continual learning. It's many learning about myself as I go through life.
This is a field of psychology, recognizing patterns in your behavior, in your thought process and analysis. And these are actually habits. Our self loves routine and loves simple stuff
Yeah.
and going on the autopilot. When you create habits, you create an autopilot for you. And that's why morning routines are so important, or a night routine as well. And also with the simple stuff. But many people, especially creative people, they don't want a routine in their jobs. They want a creative job, something that's challenging them, and it's a new environment. And again, here's what happens with pattern recognition. Our brains tends to group things and tends to find similarities amongst things because it's easier to process. It's easier to digest it. Were some studies in neuroscience about grouping, and especially this happens especially with people, as you said. When we look people, we always try to group them to say, "Oh, that person likes clubbing. The other person, he's a hiker. The other person." So this comes back as well with the multiple identities in oneself. That polymaths tend to be mixed with different groups of people and having not different personalities, different aspects of themselves.
Yeah. So I just want to take a moment too to just underscore for any polymathic people listening to this or people who want to be polymathic that part of being a real good strong polymath is taking the time not just to learn about intellectual things or work things or school things or even hobbies or physical activities, but really also including part of your learning journey to understand and know your real self, not your fitting in self, not your pretending self, not your people pleasing self, your real self. And really to put energy and effort into that as early and as much as you can, because I feel like when you really know who you are, what you're made of, what your values are, what your weaknesses are, like prejudging people too quickly, it's an opportunity for you to press the pause button and redirect and pivot and design and curate and create your personhood yourself, rather than just being on the autopilot of, whatever thought I have must be true, and I'm just going to go with it. And that person's bad, and I judge them in 2 seconds, and that must be true because it might.
Again, this is also pattern recognition. It's gonna help in creativity, since when you recognize the patterns in one's self, you
Exactly.
get to eliminate the negative ones. That I
Mhm.
tend to group people on physical appearance. I tend to group people with in regards with their degree or with their interests. For example, if somebody has an IT degree, oh, he's an introvert, he wants to work remote, and don't bother him, he wants to code all day, for example. This is not the case.
Yeah,
So
like you think
recognizing
some,
these
but not all.
patterns
Yep.
is gonna boost your creativity as you're more open to experience, as you've said in your PhD thesis, and you covered it so beautifully. And
Thank you.
being open towards many things can lead, as we said before, to creative outcomes.
Exactly. And you mentioned something a minute ago that I want to hone in on too, and I've almost not talked about this at all. In all the videos I've made and all the speeches I've given, I almost never have talked about this, but I'd love to take a moment to talk about the importance of having a diverse friend group. You said it. You can
Yeah.
learn from we learn from each other all the time. And if you have a group of homogenous friends who are all engineers and male and white, like, you might not really have as much of an enriching friend group and experience of learning from your friends as you could if you have a wide swath of different types of
Yeah.
people in your circle.
Now you remind me and my best friends, my squad in university, in the English language at university. We were four different completely personalities. I was a more traditional one because I was coming from an island with long traditional history and culture. My one other friend was like, "Oh, let's go abroad. Let's go to fancy restaurants. Let's try gourmet restaurants. Let's try more expensive and luxury experience." The other person is like, let's go dancing, let's do some adventure, let's have fun. And the other person was a nature lover and going with the flow type of person. So four different completely personalities. Everybody in the universe like, how can you be a squad? How is this possible? You are totally different. How can you mix? It's like it was a great question. It's like, because we are so different, we're having such a great time. And we try so many different things throughout our student life, and which has made us much richer, and it made us open to creativity.
Yeah. I just love having friends that are different from me. I have friends in their 70s and 60s, people from complete, and even growing up, I was best friends with my grandmother. So I love having friends from all different ages also to learn, and they can have
Mm,
wisdom, or even young people. I mean,
yeah,
sometimes I ask my 6-year-old a question and just to see what she'll say, and I'll be surprised with how wise she is. So not prejudging even age groups or generations, and opening
ageism.
yourself to being friends with people from all different generations can really enhance your experience of being alive and connecting with people. So age, I mean, gosh, when I think about my friend group, they're all just so different. And here's the thing though, in my case, because my friends are all so different and I know them all individually, I've really missed having a group, like a group of friends, like in college,
A squad.
in a group.
Mm.
And when you get out of college, the group thing gets a little bit harder. Um, a couple
This
years.
was also during my research. I've been listening a lot from the multipod podcasts, and
Mhm.
this have been mentioned so many freaking times. It's again, this is also my experience as well, because for example, I have right now friends from Cretal traditional dancing, friends from hiking, friends from work, career counselors and stuff. My old childhood friends, which we have interest in Star Wars and geek things, and now friends from rehabilitation, which I'm doing for my legs, some exercise from the gym. And so these are all different types of groups, and they are not one squad. And this tends to bother most polymaths or multipods in the case of the Partyverse podcast. It's have been brought so many times. It's really another something that needs to be researched.
I know. So, this kind of raises the question for me too. I'm curious in your experience, like when you think of a friend who's like the one who's most similar to you, and then think of the rest that are very different. Like, which kind of friend do you think really kind of is more enjoyable and more enriching? Is it the person that's like you, or is it the people that aren't?
I'm gonna say I don't have a similar person. I don't have a friend who's like a copy paste of me.
Yeah.
Everybody is totally different, and
Is there someone that's like a little bit closer, a little bit
no,
closer? No.
that's a great point.
Yeah,
That's a great point.
you're a great polymath then. You
Yeah, yeah.
have
I
individuate.
don't have somebody who has all these hobbies that I'm having, all these aspects of myself, like dancing,
Yep.
creating traditional dances, loving nature, being a hiker, writing poetry, which I'm writing, and also being a scholar or pursuing knowledge and being so interested in advancing their career, which is also my job. So yeah, I've never found a person. The most similar person I can find are some regarding my scholar side and my academic interest,
Mhm.
people who were also coming from English literature backgrounds and then a master's degree in career counseling. But
Mhm.
again, this is only my work life, my academic interests, not being a hiker, loving Cretan traditional dancing and Cretan poetry.
Yeah. I mean, I have a friend or two. They're they're never going to be exactly like me, but I would say in terms of their interests, their ways of being in the world, their hobbies, level of intelligence, like I can think of a couple of my friends that are kind of in the ballpark. Similar to me, but not identical, obviously. And then I think of like the other friends I have that are also different. And I really love being around people who are different and who think different from me because I love to learn. And especially if I have something going on in my life or in their life, I love to hear what's going on in their life because I might learn something about human beings or a technology or a resource or a destination or it's just something. And because they're different that I can learn from them. When someone's very similar to you, you may be comfortable around them. You may enjoy your time around them, but you may not grow and learn from them because you're already alike. So I think that's
Mm.
something really important. If the bottom line, this is what I'm trying to say, everybody. If you want to be a polymath, if you want to have many learnings and continue to learn, an important and enjoyable way to do that is through your social relationships. And I encourage you to be open to having a very, very, very broad friend group of people who aren't anything like you at all, or who maybe you share one or two things with, but then they have a whole bunch of diversity in themselves that's totally different from your intrapersonal diversity. Um,
This
okay.
was powerful, powerful, and totally blew me off. And this was a great suggestion, having diverse friends. Because right now, as I said before, I'm learning. And then when I'm going to talk with people upholding Cretan tradition, I'm going to learn new things about my culture. And when I'm going to talk with hikers, more experienced hikers, I'm going to learn new techniques or new routes. And I'm going to also develop myself even more
I
and
can't tell
develop.
you how important this is. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, and I want to summarize this because this must be the final point. This we must need to close with this. This is if you're gonna get to remember everybody, one thing from today's conversation is gonna be this: having a diverse group maybe it's gonna be lonely. It's gonna feel like, oh, I don't have a best friend, a bestie who is exactly like me. I'm not gonna have a copy paste mate. I'm not gonna be identical to somebody. I'm gonna have many great friends, many besties from diverse backgrounds, from different fields and different hobbies. But it's okay. It's all right. Because this is gonna help me develop myself even more, develop,
Absolutely.
develop, as you said before, knowing yourself, know thyself, even further and expanding, broadening your horizons.
Yeah, it's also just a way of being a good human being, in my opinion, because when you do that prejudging, when you say, "Oh, I know who you are, I don't want to put effort into knowing you," you prejudge people, and that prejudgment that's made in a minute or two or a day or two, like when you make those quick judgments about people without really getting to understand them, when you just know who they are and you dismiss, "I don't want anything to do with them," you really lose an opportunity to understand somebody new that could enlighten you, that could shift your worldview. I can share with you, I mean, I have all kinds of friends. I have a doctoral degree. I've worked for presidents. You can imagine I'm at a certain echelon. And so I have people that I'm friends with in my echelon. I also come from a family of, blue collar, poverty stricken people that grew up very different from how I grew up. I know people who are incarcerated. I have a brother, to be honest, who's in jail right now. I mean, I know people who are mentally ill. I know people who are poor. I know people who are rich.
Diversity.
You
Mm.
know, but they're all human beings, and I just love human beings. I love to study and understand the human experience. And so to me, it doesn't really matter so much what their resume says or their bank account says. I want to see who the person is on the inside. And it's been so enriching to me to surround myself by people who are nothing like me and then to find common ground, because that's what you'll discover. You may appear on the surface to be very different, but when you look at your core, when you look at your values, you may find overlap. You may find that someone you have nothing in common with really, really cares about, I don't know, like being a good person, honesty, authenticity, things that you care about as a polymathic person,
Values.
creativity,
Mm.
uh, being the best self that you can be. You may find someone who's a homeless person on the street that you could find common ground with. This is the power of the polymath, being able to find common ground with
Common
almost
ground.
anybody.
This is another part of pattern recognizing, that we find patterns between what am I like as a person, the person that I meet as well. And also it's helping us connect even further and develop bonds of friendship, bonds of fellowship, which are very strong, and they are everlasting many times. And even if you don't get to talk with that person every single day or even every month, even if I call my friends from the friends that I referred before, haven't talked to them in a couple of months, but when I'm gonna pick up my phone and call them, they're gonna have a conversation for about an hour or so, catching up, and it's gonna be again brilliant remembering these things. So developing bonds with people from diverse backgrounds can help you develop as a person.
Exactly. It's also a way of feeling less alone, because I can share with you one of the things my research uncovered was that it can be very, very lonely being a polymath because you never find someone like you. You find
Exactly.
people who share one or two or three things in common, but you never, if you're a highly individuated polymath, you're never going to find another you, because your
Mm.
combination, your zigzag is too complex. You're not a one-trick pony. You have expressed your onlyness to the extent that you won't find someone else in that combination. And
But the wonderful thing that we find is we're finding other polymaths. And this is thankful to your community Polymaths Place and this YouTube channel, that we come together and we recognize the pattern of not finding any other person exactly like us. And we come together here and we tend to feel less lonely
less alone.
as we recognize that we are unique. We do not have an identical twin or outside in the world, and we come together with this realization.
We're all the same because we're all unique.
Yeah.
And it can be such a lonely journey until you embrace that this is who you are. And it can, if you've got a diverse friend group, it's like a safety net away from feeling lonely and alone. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
part of the journey of being polymathic is it can be difficult. But if you establish a large and diverse and supportive friend group for yourself, it makes the journey easier. And I encourage anyone watching this also, if you haven't joined Polymath's Place on Facebook, to do so, because it is a place where people can come together and share the common experience of each being highly individuated and polymathic. And it's really important to find a community, I think, to help you get through the challenges of being this way in the age of specialization. All right, Dimitrios, do you have any final thoughts on pattern recognition, creativity, having a diverse friend group, or anything else?
I'm gonna feel that the biggest impact is this realization that having diverse groups and people, friends from different backgrounds, you may not have the squad, but you leave yourself open to greater change. And this is a great thing, and you're not lonely in that process because we have groups like Polymath's Place where we combine our uniqueness and we connect through that.
Yeah. And as my final thought will be this, in life, you can go with the flow and just whatever happens, happens, or you can recognize a pattern and make a decision to be intentional, to self-author. And this is an opportunity. I encourage you to do both. Go with the flow of the friends you just naturally create, but also consider being intentional. Like, what kind of people do I want to invite into my life? Who have I not learned about yet? What kinds of person could I expose myself to, my interiority to, that might enhance my personhood? Go on the journey, be open to chance, and also write your own story in creative and intentional ways. And part of how you can do that we don't really talk about that hardly at all in our scholarly, influencer type of community as it relates to polymathy, is just how important a diverse friend group is. So I just want to encourage anyone watching this, please think about what we've said, reflect on it on your own. And if it feels true that having a diverse friend group can help you develop in more polymathic ways and have a more enriched life, well then, gosh darn it, go do it. And on that note, thank you, Dimitrios, for a wonderful conversation yet again. I'm sure we'll have many more in the future. And thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you all have a great day. Bye.